Does your furry friend take over your bed every night? It's time to reclaim your space while giving them the comfort they deserve with the coldest, cozy dog bed. Don't wait. Check out the link in the video description to buy now on Amazon.
The Warsaw Uprising, which broke out exactly 80 years ago today, was the largest and most savage insurgency against Nazi occupation ever seen. Starting on August 1, 1944, by the time it ended 63 days later, close to 85% of the Polish capital had been decimated. Around 18,000 insurgents were killed during brutal fighting and another 25,000 injured. More than 180,000 civilians were also killed in German mass executions and bombings. Although the German atrocities and acts of Polish heroism are well documented, lesser known is that the insurgency also saw hundreds of men and women from 18 different countries involved in the fight for Warsaw's survival. One of them was Birmingham RAF pilot John Ward, who had been shot down over France and then imprisoned in a prisoner of war camp in occupied Poland. Also involved was Irish-born nurse Eileen Short, French pilot Jean Gasparex, and Nigerian musician August Egbola Brown, who is thought to have been the only black person to have taken part in the uprising. After escaping from the POW camp he was in, Ward joined the Polish resistance movement known as the Home Army, AK. When the uprising broke out, the 25-year-old began sending reports directly to London, where they were shared with British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Ward, who sent more than 100 dispatches, was counting on the Allies to drop arms and supplies to the insurgents, which they initially did. When Joseph Stalin's Red Army arrived on Warsaw's East Bank shortly after the uprising broke out, it was widely expected that the Russian troops would cross the river and fight alongside the Poles. But Stalin refused to help. Instead, Stalin decided to wait the battle out, and refused to let British planes enter its airspace to drop supplies to the Polish fighters. His plan was to let the Nazis win so the Red Army could then roll in and take the Polish capital. In a plea for supplies from the Allies, on August 28, 1944, Ward wrote, "Extremely urgent," to Sir Archibald Sinclair, Minister of Air. The situation in Warsaw is critical. We do not have sufficient quantities of arms and ammunition to conduct any offensive operations. The losses are colossal. There is not a house that has not been shelled by artillery, mine throwers, or aircraft. The inhabitants of the city are desperate. In another dispatch, Ward wrote, "The time of the uprising is measured not only by the fatigue of the insurgents, but also by the number of dead. The dead are everywhere. Sometimes it seems that there are more of them than the fighting." In his last dispatch on September 29, 3 days before the resistance surrendered, Ward wrote, "There are only 2 Polish islands of resistance left, in the north and in the city center. The lack of food is so severe that even frontline soldiers have nothing to eat." Following the collapse of the uprising, Ward fled Warsaw and continued fighting with the resistance. By 1945, the Soviet troops had taken control of large swathes of Poland and began hunting down AK members and executing them. Ward at first dodged both German and Red Army troops, but was then captured by Soviet secret police when he returned to Warsaw in March 1945. After being interrogated he was thrown into a cell. Incredibly, he escaped once again, this time with the help of an American captain, and returned to England. Dodging both German and Red Army troops, in March he returned to Warsaw where he was captured by the Soviet secret police and after being interrogated was thrown into a cell. The following day he managed to escape and with the help of an American captain eventually managed to return to England. He died in 1995 in London. When Irish-born Eileen Short, from Liverpool, arrived in Warsaw in 1935 to teach English to a wealthy Polish woman she had met in Windsor, it must have seemed she'd arrived on a different planet. With its cocktail parties, high-class restaurants and heady nightlife, the Polish capital was dubbed the Paris of the East. It was a far cry from the industrial port city ravished by unemployment she had left behind. A year later, the 24-year-old met and fell in love with a dashing army lieutenant named Józef Galiński. But life as she knew it was thrown into disarray following Hitler's invasion of Poland in September 1939, an act of aggression which triggered the outbreak of the Second War.